So I'm rereading Magi and I come to the realization that Alibaba is a singularity. Now I think I'm actually really slow. I'm surprised with the amount of times I've reread the series. I have never caught on to this. I think I'm actually very, very dense on how it went over my head. Alright, so why is Alibaba a singularity? Well, I mean, there's a whole bunch of reasons and it's all really crammed into the final arc, with, I guess, the main one being how when Alibaba was kind of in the other space, when he died against Hakuryu, where he was with the other members of Almatoran, he, just like David, these were the only two people who still had their emotions or had life or zest to them. And it's made pretty clear by both the magicians of Almatoran, I think they were called Walid and something else, but Alibaba is just like David. There is something very, very special about him. Now, what do the two have in common? The only thing that they have in common, it's that they're both singularities. So singularity is someone, as you must know if you're watching this, it's someone who surveys destiny, or I mean, it's very vague, but they pretty much have the ability to, even in a sense, combat destiny. It's very interesting. I personally think these are people who are viable to be god candidates, actually. Regardless of what Ugo tells Sinbad, how he says, you're not a god vessel. I actually think singularities are god vessels, or they have the potential to become god vessels, as we've seen with David, who became a god, Sinbad, who became a god, and Alibaba, who was about to become a god, but he refused it himself. Now, the second reason that I think he's a singular, it's pretty obvious. I really don't get how I never saw this. It's something that's not discussed because it's never directly stated, but I guess it's something that's kind of inferred to. The second thing being how he was not affected by Sinbad's rewriting of the Ruh. Now, the initial explanation we get from Alibaba himself is a half-assed guess or assumption that it's because he died once before, so that's why it didn't affect him. I just think that makes no sense. I think it's a pretty odd reason. I can see why he thinks that. It's the only thing that differentiates him from everyone else in the world, beside Aladdin and the people who had their Ruh dye black. But it could also be because he's a singularity. As we've seen with Sinbad, this is very, very important. Sinbad, Ugo defeated Sinbad, and he put his Ruh into kind of like the flow, the great flow, so that it could be recycled into someone else. As you see, he was basically, Ugo was trying to rewrite Sinbad's Ruh, put it back into the flow, as I just said. But it didn't work for some reason. Sinbad was able to not lose himself. He was able to somehow remain conscious. And that reason being, he is a singularity. That is the reason how he's able to do it. And would you look at that, the other person who didn't have their Ruh dyed black, and obviously what didn't have Solomon's wisdom, Aladdin, he's from Almatoran, he's from another world, was Alibaba. Now, granted, it really could just be because he was from the other dimension, and because he came back from there, somehow that affected his Ruh. That could make sense because, you know, Aladdin being from Almatoran, it didn't work on him, or Adaba for that matter, because they weren't of that world, which doesn't really make sense, but I guess they didn't want Aladdin to just be brainwashed. It is what it is. But I really do think the fact that Alibaba didn't have his emotions kind of just gone, you know, he still was full of life when he went to the other world when he died. They literally said he was the only one who could continue to believing he could come back to life just like him. Two magicians from Almatoran look at each other like, no, it can't be. It can be. It's the case. He is just like David. It's people didn't understand this from Almatoran. I mean, I guess at the end they actually realized why. It's because he's a singularity. I mean, I could be wrong. There could be another reason. I just don't see it. I just do not see why Alibaba would be the one out of, what is it, like thousands, tens of thousands? I don't know. I don't remember how many people. The only other person to not lose his emotions beside David, who was a singularity. There might even be more evidence. I don't really know. I mean, hey, let me know if there is. But yeah, I do think that's really likely. I mean, it makes a lot of sense considering who Alibaba is and who he ends up becoming, that he is a singularity.